Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Thrive Co-Living Communities YouTube podcast. I'm Mark Stein, Thrive founder and your podcast host. We're creating sustainable, inclusive, and multi-generational residential communities. Our mission is to combat the epidemic of isolation, revitalize communities, and help others discover the many benefits of engaged community living by offering unique and ecologically sustainable co-living options. In this podcast series, join us as we discuss co-living, in addition to bringing you interesting people from around the world who are doing cool things to expand your knowledge and satisfy your curiosity. Through this podcast, learn more about our concept and see how Thrive co-living communities will bring together people from all walks of life who want to enjoy the best of independent and group living. To find out more about us, please visit our website at thrivecolivingcommunities.org. Thanks for watching and enjoy the podcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Thrive Co-Living Communities YouTube podcast. Glad to have you here and glad to have my new friend, Brayton Bowen, with us today. He is a consultant. I'll let him tell in more detail about his background, but he's been focused on human resources. And as a consultant, he's focusing on the importance of compassion in the workplace. And he has an interesting twist on it where he's showing how, in terms of dollars and cents, how cost effective compassion can be in the workplace. And we'll talk about the need for that, and whether it should be that we have to prove dollars and cents value of something like that. But Brayton, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
So talk a little bit about your background.
Sure.
And we only have an hour, so don't go too deep into it.
No.
but talk about your work journey and what brought you to this thesis or pitch that you're now promoting on compassion.
I appreciate that. Well, first of all, as you identified, I'm in the area of human resource management and more than 26 years in the profession. And over that period of time, I have seen a radical change to the profession. In my combination of credentials includes being an adjunct professor at a university, writing any number of works, being a public speaker, being a consultant, and all of that. But I've come to focus on compassion, as I call it. It is a new age currency that I think is critical for us to focus on. So let me just explain by way of sort of setting this up. 45 million people have resigned from their jobs during the pandemic. 2.5 million refused to return. Nearly 1 million will never return due to COVID-19. We have 2 million fewer women in the workforce, which will be even fewer given the overturning of Roe v. Wade, as women will not be available to work. That offers a whole set of challenges for the human resource profession by way of redesigning benefits, policies, and dealing with the employee needs. So the last thing I'll mention is the resource for immigrant labor has also been blocked by border policies in the absence of legal immigration reform legislation. So we're hurting our economy by excluding that element of the workforce. Oh, sorry about that. Cell phone.
That's okay. No problem.
Yeah. So The other aspect is labor economics. We are still at $7.25 minimum wage. There's been no change since 2009, although some employers in some states are recognizing that is not acceptable. Management has chosen the strategy of what has been coined as low road economics. And I credit Joel Rogers, who's at the University of Wisconsin, a sociologist, who says basically management is focused on worker wages and product price rather than product quality and worker welfare. So the age-old human resource practices with respect to reward systems, performance management, and penalties like performance improvement plans versus aligning employee goals and dreams with the organization's reward system has been problematic. Interestingly enough, there's a gentleman by the name of Alfie Kohn who wrote a book published by Rewards, and he actually focused on the educational system here in Kentucky. And he said, punished by rewards, gold stars, incentive plans, A's, and praise, which essentially do not optimize the learning of the student. So somewhat inspired by his work, I did research on recognizing and rewarding employees. And this book was published by McGraw-Hill in 2000. What I'm finding now is that by focusing on compassion, we have an opportunity to actually regard strategies of compassion as ways to inspire employees to come to work, to be engaged in the mission and vision of organizations, to improve organizational performance, and increase profits up to 40% and more. I'll stop for a moment, but I would like to explain what prompted me in this direction. And basically what prompted me to publish my research in my newest book, Engaging the Heart for People, Performance, and Profit, 7 Competencies of Compassion at Work. So Mark,
we'll put it in the show notes, but flash it back up there again. You passed it too quickly.
Okay.
Got it.
And it is. It's all of $12.95. It's on sale on Amazon. And I've identified 7 organizations in the greater Louisville area that have implemented competencies of compassion and are doing exactly what I said, engaging employees, improving performance, and increasing profits up to 40% and more.
Let's talk about having to monetize compassion. And in a way, you could argue what a sad state of affairs that we have to show the dollar and cents value of it. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
And I think it relates to this this quote that you gave about, and I can't bring it back up, on the low road.
Low road capitalism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
And culturally, how we got there.
Well, that is a terrific question because it doesn't involve just the workplace, but it involves our culture nationally. So here's my take on what's going on. And I quote 2 resources that are worth considering. The concept has to do essentially with our tribal culture in this country. And the gentleman, let's see if I can find it, the gentleman who just really expounded on this most recently is John Meacham. He is a political historian, and he's a winner of a Pulitzer Prize. This is a #1 New York Times bestseller. It's called The Soul of America, the battle for our better angels. And so what he's describing is a tribal culture where one group is pitted against another: Republicans versus Democrats, whites versus blacks, conservative versus liberals. And the gentleman who takes it even further, who is a deceased but sociologist, is Emil Durkheim. And he wrote a book called Suicide, late 1800s, early 1900s. And he described how various cliques within a society compete with one another, and where the anger, which is directed outward, goes in the extreme direction, it can be turned inward to suicide. And of course, his famous book is entitled Suicide. But he describes this phenomenon. And essentially what we're looking at is individualism, capitalism, even religion, as all elements that are basically forcing our culture to be competitive rather than and individualistic, rather than being constructive
Cooperative.
and cooperative. Correct. So when what got me into writing this book is that our mayor launched the Partnership for Compassion at Louisville, and I was recruited to oversee the team that dealt with organizations, for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. And so I and a colleague reviewed some 200 organizations who had signed the charter for compassion. And what we were charged with doing is seeing if there's a return on investment for being a compassionate organization. And indeed, we found that. And so I identified 7 competencies of compassion that in fact do what I said earlier: inspire employees, improve organizational performance, and increase profits up to 40% and more. And they included organizations like UPS, Sullivan University, Humana, Brown-Forman, I meant to say Spalding University, and La Casita Center, which is a not-for-profit that serves more than 36,000 immigrants and refugees here in the greater Louisville area. And so having basically concluded on the research that I did, I decided that I needed to go out to my human resource counterparts and convince them, help them understand that implementing strategies of compassion are really the operative thing to do post-pandemic and in the new workplace. And I even contributed a chapter. You're familiar with Bob Thiel in his book on Back to a New Normal: In Search of Stability in an Era of Pandemic Disruption. And so I wrote a chapter on compassion, the new age currency. So where does this go? Well, in appealing to HR professionals, here's what I found. They understand that it's important to be a compassionate and kind organization. Their concern is that management will view them as being in the touchy-feely business and not contributing to the bottom line. And so by emphasizing compassion as a new age currency that does in fact benefit organizations, my hope is that they will come to appreciate the value of these strategies.
So, 2 thoughts. come to mind. One is that, and I was associated with human resources closely when I was doing mediation as part of my work life.
I'm trained to do that too.
And so I interacted a lot and actually was part of that local human resource association. And what I noticed is that HR seems to have been marginalized in a lot of companies and not given a seat at the table at the rank, especially at the VP rank, that they arguably deserve. So they, in many organizations, if not most, from my observing, they've lost a lot of power and influence. So I can see how if they are blowing the horn of compassion, especially in an organization that's more focused on bottom line results, that sort of thing, that I can see, and a lot of them are very timid and insecure.
Right.
And I think the dynamic pushed them that way because they lost influence, if they ever had it, when they were personnel,
Exactly.
head of personnel. So what are your thoughts about that as a contributor?
Well, I think you're exactly right. Management, for the most part, has, I think, been viewing human resources as more appropriate for diversity candidates, minorities, women, etc. And they have considered the HR profession, I don't want to say more of a showcase, but certainly in some organizations, management pays lip service to the value of employees and the value of human resource professionals. So, I indicated that my focus has been on the HR professionals, but I'm also focusing on leaders, and I'm able to show them using statistical analysis and related instruments, quantitative instruments, how their leadership style, is helping the organization or hurting the organization. So while they may not view this as compassion work, the final analysis, if they're focusing on the welfare of the employee, building teams, setting goals that include the personal objectives of their employees along with the objectives of the company, they actually will outperform the competition. There's a wonderful story. One of the 7 competencies that I focus on is stewardship. And I hesitate to go through a list of what the 7 competencies are, but stewardship is not understood by a lot of organizations. But those who do, like UPS, appreciate the value of employees and the value of investing in employees in ways that removes them from the throne and puts the employees on the throne for their personal betterment as well as for the betterment of the organization. And one of the stories that I really love is the story of Aaron Firestein, who was the president and owner of Malden Mills in Malden, Massachusetts. And his factory burned down, and he was concerned about the welfare of the employees and about the welfare of the communities in which he operated. And so he took the insurance money and invested part of it in rebuilding his business, but he kept 3,000 employees on the payroll receiving benefits for as long as he could. And once his factories reopened, these employees hit the ground running because the meta knowledge that they had in terms of the basic of the organization paid off. So I look at that as an example of stewardship, truly an exceptional story and an exceptional feat.
You know, I'd like to trace the roots of this problem, if you will, back one more step. And I happen to have graduated from college in 78. I'm dating myself here. And that was precisely the time that the contract changed, or maybe it had changed, but I think it was just starting to change between employer and employee. The old contract, immediate post-war, World War II, and beyond in the 60s, was you trade your loyalty for security. So if you'll be loyal to the company and give us your best, then you are going to have, and you perform moderately well, you're going to have lifetime employment. You're going to retire. It may just be with a gold watch, but well, back then there were traditional pensions. So you're going to have a pension, you're going to have that gold watch. I'm talking about management and above.
I understand.
And then right around the time that I graduated, or it may have just been that my awareness changed about the contract, but it seemed to change to, we're going to give you an opportunity. And this is even, I think, even more relevant today. We're going to give you an opportunity to do some work, to learn, to grow, but there's really no loyalty coming your way. There's no security. And even the benefit moved from pension to 401k that was portable. So there's no security, and hence no or very little loyalty. Since you have been involved and during that time, is my timing correct, or was that just my awareness of, because I was a recent grad?
I think your timing is correct. I think what you've described is the psychological contract, the change in the psychological contract between employers and employees. And it used to be, it was kind of a codependent relationship. If I show up and I do my work and I'm a good boy or a girl, then management will take care of me, presumably for the rest of my working career. The psychological contract changed so that there was not that dependency, if you will, codependency. Instead, it was two parties who mutually decided, for better or for worse, that they would stay with one another so long as there was a benefit to each party. In a way, the change of the psychological contract really forced people to grow up and to recognize that mommy daddy organization were not going to cover you into the future. So the employee decided to stay with the organization so long as they received appropriate recognition and rewards, and the employer would keep the employee so long as they were benefiting the performance of the organization. And that psychological contract is what was going on during that period. When I came to, I'm going to digress just a little bit. When I came to Louisville in 1986, my office actually overlooked the Standard Gravure and Courier Journal properties. And so 1989, we saw the massacre at Standard Gravure. I can actually see bodies being transported in the street. The mayor was involved trying to help the victims. And subsequently, I began to see training like active shooter in the workplace. My university was training faculty in active shooting situations. And so our environment became more aggressive, more angry. In 2000, I actually hosted and produced a 5-part documentary series for public radio on anger in the workplace. And at that time, we were seeing shootings in the Postal Service. That has just gone to the extreme in terms of what we see in our gun culture today and the massive, slaughter, if you will, of school children and normal shoppers and worshipers. So a lot has changed in our culture. A lot has changed in the working relationship between the employer and the employee. So you were on the threshold of that change at that time.
And one other point I want to make about that is that I believe, even though it was paternalistic in that old contract,
right,
I believe that there was a sense of compassion that was expressed on the part of the employer towards the employee. And you would often hear then, I don't think you hear it now, we're one big happy family. Now, I know a lot of it was BS, but I think that there was a familiar
sure.
Culture
Yes,
in many organizations that led to a compassionate approach to employees, so that when somebody died, somebody got sick, a child got hurt, there was a culture of outpouring of support for that person. And I'm not sure that holds today.
no, I think that your observation is correct. There was that feeling of family. Now you have to understand, not all families are constructive. So
There's a lot of dysfunction in families, for sure.
So to the extent that they could be compassionate as families, I think you're right. But as the emphasis on profitability, and again, if you go to Emil Durkheim, he talks about what happens with capitalism and individualism, and our culture has been shifting significantly away from that. So when I went to the unnamed company that I was the chief human resources officer for here in Louisville, one of the things that management wanted me to do was basically strip away retirement benefits for future employees, and to recover whatever we could with the healthcare benefits for retirees. Well, I was the compassionate one and figured out, how to serve two masters, the master for human resource management and the master for management. But that was in 1986. Again, that was the beginning of the change to de-emphasize contributions to retirement plans, and we went to IRAs, SEPs, and all of that. So yeah, you've witnessed it. You made the observations.
So let's shift a little bit, and let's put some specifics down in terms of what does compassion in the workplace look like, and maybe we can broaden it on, even broader than in the workplace. But let's talk about, what does it look like, and especially since many of us have lost a sense of that in the workplace. Give some examples of how it's expressed, and some good case studies.
Okay. Well, I'll take one of the examples, reward and recognition systems. It used to be that we would design systems that had levels and steps, and we would sit with the employee and we would say, this is your job, this is the value, this is where it is, and this is how your reward will change over time, assuming acceptable performance. What was not included in that discussion were the needs and wants of employees. So, for example, we didn't talk about helping them save for college funds. We didn't talk about helping them plan for home purchases. And so one of the strategies in terms of reward and recognition systems is to work with the employees and find out what their goals and objectives are, and help them understand how they can achieve their dreams, their goals and objectives within the system of the organization. So we see flexible benefits programs. Not everybody's going to stay with an organization until retirement, but if there are different options for them to save, then those gains, if you will, can help them realize the goals and objectives that they have. So the Kentucky Center at the time of my study was doing exactly that, working with the employees and aligning their goals and objectives, their dreams, with the structures, the compensation structure of the system. Another area has to do with cultures of diversity, inclusion, and intersectionality. My poster child organization in my book is Humana, who has received all kinds of recognition for their programs. They concentrate on employee resource groups. That is groups where people have common needs and characteristics that they share with one another. So, a veterans group, a women's group, an African American group. The problem with employee resource groups is that creates sort of silos, separateness. And so one of the voices that I interviewed and chose to include in that chapter was a gentleman by the name of Wade Davis, ex-NFL player, football player, and consultant, African American, male, gay, and he consults to the NFL and to Google and other organizations on the concept of intersectionality. You're not just a white man, you are a parent, you are a teacher, you are a professional, you are all of these elements that are combined to make you who you are. And so what Wade concentrates on is the fact that intersectionality includes all of our attributes. And so by doing that, there's more of a collaborative effort. There's more of a community that comes out of that approach. So these are the kinds of things that I focused on in the study.
So I share this not to toot my own horn, but to really just show where we've come. And that is that I think that we have such a not adversarial relationship in the workplace, but separate and sort of a cool relationship in the workplace that when I go out of my way to thank my team, I have a lot of people don't know, I have a marketing company that I do for my work. And this is more a passion project with Thrive. But whenever I go out of my way to thank employees and my coworkers, I can tell that they're touched. this past Thanksgiving, and we have a remote workplace and an international workplace.
Mhm.
And this past Thanksgiving, my team knows that I like Thanksgiving much better than I like Christmas. And that's sort of my holiday. And they did a Thanksgiving party with us all remotely. And when you share, and this sort of ties into some of the work that Brene Brown is doing about being authentic and
Right.
just sharing my gratitude for my coworkers and my team, even though I'm technically the boss, really seemed to have an impact. And because they're remote and almost everyone's a contractor, the things that I choose to do to thank them are sort of random. And I think there may be some benefit in random rather than routine perks. In other words, if you've got free meals, every meal in your workplace, I'm not sure at some point people probably don't appreciate it as much as they would. But just recently, for no reason, no holiday, we polled everybody to find out what their favorite Starbucks coffee drink was. And they did know about it. It wasn't a surprise. And then on Friday afternoon, everybody got their favorite Starbucks drink. And that may be the new currency of the workplace, is Starbucks coffee. But the appreciation for that just signals how little we're doing. Now, in some tech cultures, they do the free meals and the ping pong tables and the slides and the free dry cleaning, but I suspect that not as much of that is done. So I think it just points to the fact that we do so little that whenever you do something, it's really noted and appreciated.
Yes,
Can
I
you
agree.
speak to
No,
that?
great example. And I'm reminded of a retail story of mine where a retailer in one of the markets where I was working decided that he would give his employees at Thanksgiving a free turkey. And boy, that went over like gangbusters. The next year he did the same. Well, as the years progressed, people began to complain that the turkey they got this year was not as big as the one as last year. So, like Alfie Kohn says, if the concentration is on the stars and the little sticky on your papers, it takes away the importance of learning. It takes away the importance of relationships, and the example that you gave. So one of the terms that I've coined is organizational distancing. We know that more people are working remotely, and it requires a challenge on the part of management to reach out and to make sure that their relationship with every employee is constructive, positive, and personal. It's a challenge. It is really a challenge. But it's treating each individual uniquely, treating each individual differently. So a mass, my wife is a nurse practitioner, and one of the things that she's complained about in working in hospitals in the past, that is, was that the hospital, instead of providing, an extra stipend or a gift or whatever, monetary gift for working extra duties, they would buy pizzas. Well, I have to tell you, you can't exactly deposit a pizza into your checking account. So, it's like, get real, people. Low road capitalism is not going to drive employees to be inspired or to really feel great love for you as an organization. But the kind of things that you're talking about, unique, individualized, random, those are good examples. Those are good examples. Focusing on the employee.
We are in a new era now. COVID's hopefully post-COVID, where people are, and this was part of the thrust of your book with Bob Thiel. More people are working remotely. Maybe talk about how your approach and how compassion can be translated into this new era, where I can think of ways that it could be superior to a workplace where you see each other every day. And sometimes that workplace, like schools, can be a cruel place. So what do you see as some opportunities that managers can use to have or to maintain that connection, compassion, interaction with their employees?
It's a tough question. There's a couple of things going on. First of all, organizations are saving on square footage and corporate overhead, assuming that they have workforce, some percentage of which is working remotely. So that condition is not going to go away. And in fact, I think different corporations are going to value that savings in terms of corporate overhead. As far as what can be done, every individual needs to be recognized as an individual. And establishing that relationship is absolutely critical. So for you as a leader, it's important for you to know the needs and wants of each of your team members, what's important to them, and basically how they're doing. We see with the overturning of Roe v. Wade that situations are going to change dramatically. So how do we accommodate the needs of employees in that kind of situation? And I don't want to get into the details or get political, but we are being challenged today in corporate America to address the needs of women and women's health. And if we don't, corporations are going to suffer because they're not going to have the availability of the women in their workforce that they would like to have. So it's a complex question. I don't have an immediate answer, but I have a general answer. And that is know your employees and be willing to work with them to address their needs and their wants, and not just the needs and wants of the organization. Because ultimately, as we saw with Aaron Firestein, the needs of the organization will be satisfied if the employer is focused on the needs and wants of the employee as well as on the needs and wants of the organization. Did I come anywhere close to answering your question?
I think so. And the idea that I had is that I think it's quite common now to have group team meetings virtually, and some are probably in the office. And I was thinking that it's probably even more important now to have regular individual meetings with each person.
I agree totally.
Virtually.
Yeah.
Because there's something about, and you and I met in that way, in a one-on-one meeting. And I think that gives some, and if it's a workplace where you're in person, same thing. So that individual connection
Yeah.
developing compatibilities, common interests, so that you can ask about the spouse and the kids and
Right.
that sort of thing. So
I
that
agree with you.
comes to mind. And to me, I know a lot of people don't like Zoom, but I find it pretty intimate. And also, especially since I saw your cat crawling across your desk. Um, I love that about the COVID era is if the kids would come bust into the room and
Yeah.
hug the dad or mom's neck, and the
Right.
cat's crawling across the screen and the dog's barking, and it I think it gave us, and for the most part, except people like me that use virtual backgrounds, for the most part, we're 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 getting inside at least part of somebody's house, and sometimes
Yes.
they're in one colleague had three, in the height of COVID, had three young kids at home, I think all under the age of 5, 4. And he was in his closet with a Zoom meeting. Um, that was his only refuge.
I get it.
Um, so
Get
I
it.
think there's an opportunity there.
I saved this article that appeared in the business section of the New York Times back in April, and I don't think you're going to be able to see it, but essentially, there's pictures of balloons and all kinds of rah-rah, and it turns out, have fun like it's your job. Google is creating a work environment with food trucks and concerts and other perks. Now, I would suggest the verdict is probably still out on that as to, what it accomplishes. It's again like feeding the nurses free pizza, uh, as opposed to dealing with the needs and wants of the individuals. So there's not going to be one right answer, but I do believe that with respect to competencies of compassion, what you and I are talking about is relationships and forming meaningful relationships with each of our employees. There's no easy way.
Maybe as we start heading towards wrapping up, maybe pull this back from the workplace a little bit and talk about compassion in a more interpersonal way outside of the workplace.
Mm,
And I would imagine, since this is such a priority with you, that it bleeds into your personal life as well. So what are some of your things that you value about compassion in your family life,
wow.
interpersonal with friends? So let's talk about it in a more general way than just the workplace.
Sure. Well, segueing into an answer to your question, one of the competencies that I talk about is corporate social programs, and social responsibility. So Seminole Realtors, for example, is engaged with Habitat for Humanity, and their employees actually volunteer and they work with Habitat. Obviously, there's a relationship between their volunteer work and their real estate business. But the leader that I interviewed said it really speaks to the soul of the organization, because they are enhancing the welfare of the community in which they are working. One of the things that, well, I do a number of things. I just finished a book club on the book Boundless Compassion, and working with individuals in terms of their life orientation and how they can be less angry and more compassionate in terms of what's going on in the workplace. I'll hesitate to tell tell you a joke, but I'll tell you anyway. You know, we see road rage. Wow. People are driving so aggressively, you know, cutting one another off and riding on the tail, etc. So my normal reaction, like so many people, is to use some uncomplimentary epithet to describe the individual. Boy, there was a nice workaround.
Yeah, with a gesture, an accompanying gesture.
Yeah. Well, I don't do that anymore for fear that somebody's going to wave a gun at me. I now have substituted. He must be in a hurry. Bless his heart.
Having a bad day.
Yeah. And so it's kind of humorous for me, which helps take some of the sting out of it. But I work with individuals who are in employment transition, and I provide free services to those who are in need. And it gives me a tremendous amount of satisfaction to help them design an entirely new model of resumes and a virtual model of their elevator speech, which I call their brand. So my brand is my name is Brayton Bowen, and I have a passion for building better worlds of work. I implement competencies of compassion that inspire employees, improve organizational performance, and increase profits up to 40% and more. So that's my elevator speech put into a brand. It's 30 seconds. And so I work with individuals to help them focus on what it is they are about, and then make that into a virtual package so that when they approach employers, they can send that in advance or after they meet with a prospective employer, along with their anecdotal resume, which is a different kind of resume. So I do that on a voluntary basis. And you know, I'm on different boards, and I work with different organizations as a volunteer, and that's part of my devotion to compassion, if you will. Does that make sense?
Sure.
One of the guys that I'm working with is quick one. I started locally, and unfortunately, he's a green card person, and he's in the process of being deported. So I'm communicating with him every day from the ICE facility in Louisiana where he is, praying that he will be safely deported in July. And I've learned so much more about prison systems and the ICE facilities, and how angry people are, and you know, what happens when gangs are incarcerated, et cetera. So I just, you know, I do all I can to keep his spirits up and help him get out of here with his life in hand. So those are the things that I do.
You know, just to bring it to Thrive and our concept for a moment, compassion, understanding, mutual support is an important cornerstone with our concept.
I agree.
I feel like people are truly missing that, and especially in this divisive political era.
Yes.
And so we're really aiming to do that. So I hope to call on you as we develop to talk about how we can implement that, execute that.
Yeah, I'm happy
within
to.
our community.
Great concept. Great concept. It's
Let me just ask you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's so needed. Go ahead.
So let me ask you if there's any other point that you haven't talked about, any questions that I haven't asked that you'd like to make as we wrap up.
I will offer to anyone who listens to this a free handbook on compassion. So all you have to do is go to buildingbetterworldsofwork.com/application, and you will get a free handbook on competencies of compassion. So again, it's buildingbetterworldsofwork.com. Don't forget the .com /application. And I offer that. I want to thank you so much for having this conversation, Mark.
Nice. Before I let you go, though, give us any other ways to contact you. How can people find you other than through that website?
Yes, you can reach me by email, Brayton at buildingbetterworldsofwork.com, or you can reach me on my cell number, 502-558-2154. And I'm always looking for speaking engagements, and I offer free consultations for anybody who has a question about where they are, where they want to go. So, that's part of my compassion devotion to help others. So thank you for asking. And, maybe we can include that in the recording that you're making.
Yes. Well, we'll put that in the show notes. Tell us again what your book, or the two books that I'm aware of.
It's Engaging the Heart for People, Performance, and Profit. 7 Competencies of Compassion at Work. It's an @ sign. So,
and then the chapter with Bob Thiel's book.
The chapter with Bob Thiel. Well, the book is Back to a New Normal. Let's see. I guess you can see that. It's a pretty stark cover, and I'm in chapter 5. Monetizing Compassion, the Case for a New Age Currency.
Nice. Well, we'll put all that in the show notes.
Okay.
And encourage people to reach out to you. And you do consult with businesses
Definitely.
on
and
compassion.
Individuals. Yeah, individuals and organizations, for profit and not for profit.
Great. Well, this has been good. It's, as I said, it's a cornerstone of our concept and something that I ponder on a regular basis and work on. I find it a challenge personally. Some people, like my dad, was the kind of person that just oozed warmth and compassion just very naturally and shared that. Mm-hmm. And I find that I have to think about it, and I have to work on it and be very intentional because it's not just part of, I don't ooze it. So it's something that I really work on and focus on, because I think it's an important attribute that we need to cultivate.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you're really doing good work. And I used to be on the board at Wellspring, and so helping individuals into assisted living situations was one of the strategies that they adopted as part of their mission. I've done volunteer work for the Kentucky Racetrack Chaplaincy, delivering meals to the workers, and there are all kinds of ways in which we can benefit others in the name of compassion. So I love what you're doing. Keep up the good work, Mark.
Well, thank you. And same back to you.
Thank you.
And it's been a great experience having you on the show, and we'll talk at other times and have you back on to talk about it. So thanks so much. And thanks to everybody in the audience for tuning in. We're on weekly on YouTube and all of the podcast channels. If you want to support the podcast, there are some notes on how you can do that. We have a Patreon account and crowdfunding, all sorts of ways to support the podcast and Thrive. So please look down there and support us in any way that you choose, but mainly just keep tuning in. We're exploring all sorts of topics like we did today with compassion and all around sustainability and those sorts of concepts. So, Brayton, thanks again. And thanks everybody for joining in. See you next time. Thanks for joining us for another great episode of the Thrive Co-Living Communities YouTube podcast. To learn more about our mission and how you can support our vision of creating co-living communities worldwide, please visit us at thrivecolivingcommunities.org. To receive advanced viewings of our podcast and other exclusive content, find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Thrive Co-Living Communities. You can also learn more ways to support our mission in the show notes below. Amazon Smile, GoFundMe, Kroger, and our own Thrive Gear store, where you can buy t-shirts, hats, and many other items. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.